Today's episode has been brought to you by OfferingTree. I am sure that you did not sign up to be a yoga teacher so you could send more Zoom links and emails and update your website more often. Most yoga teachers I know signed up because they wanted to share yoga and because of how yoga impacted their life. And that's why I love to tell yoga teachers about OfferingTree. If you are struggling with your website, needing to create one or needing to simplify it, or if you need help with any part of your yoga business that happens online, maybe that's payments, Zoom links, emails, videos that you want to share, make sure to check out OfferingTree. It's the platform that I use and love, and we also have a discount code for you. That's over at offeringtree.com/Shannon. And today's episode is also brought to you by Pelvic Health Professionals. In there, we hire guest experts every month so that you can ask all the questions and get the most up-to-date information. And today, I'm actually going to be sharing some snippets of one of those calls that we did with Michelle Lyons because, oh my gosh, it was so good. And I want you to hear some examples of what we talked about and some examples of the amazing knowledge that Michelle shared with our pelvic health professionals. And if you listen and you think, I want to learn more, the great news is that you have full access to the replay with a special coupon code just because you're listening to today's podcast episode. So head on over to pelvichealthprofessionals.com, click on the join button, and then when you get to checkout, use the code LISTENERSGIFT279. I'll make sure to also put this in the show notes today. And that will give you access to everything in the library, including the 1-hour guest expert talk that we did with Michelle Lyons on bowel health. If you're new here, hello and welcome. This is the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast, and I am so honored to be your host. My name is Shannon Crow. I use she, her pronouns, and this podcast is being recorded on Anishinaabe, Odawa, and Mississauga land, also known as the Bruce Peninsula, up here in Ontario, Canada. Before we dive right into today's topic, I want to acknowledge that yoga was taken. The people and the cultures that cared for yoga a long time ago in that process were not cared for and honored. And so I am learning each and every day how I, as a white yoga teacher from the West, can take care of this practice. And I'm so glad that you are here with me on this journey as we learn about all kinds of things. Everything from yoga to how to run a business. A lot of you know that I'm really passionate about learning about pelvic health. We just did a whole month on really digging into looking at how we can care for the roots of yoga and looking at cultural appropriation. So thank you for being here with me on this learning journey. And speaking of learning, I'm also a mom of 3. Those 3 humans are my best teachers. I learn the most from them. I'm a yoga teacher, podcaster, and founder of Pelvic Health Professionals as well. And this podcast was created for you so that each and every week, as you're busy doing all of the things that you're doing as a yoga teacher, you might be planning your classes, driving around to spaces where you share yoga, figuring out all of the tech of online things, diving into learning more about being an entrepreneur, or you might be teaching yoga, once a week while you do your full-time job and want to figure out how you can build a yoga business. We are here for you, and this podcast was created so that you could listen while you're on the go, while you're doing things in your busy life. And today, I'm going to get very personal here very quickly because I don't think enough people are talking about poop. Yes, you heard me correctly. And maybe one thing that you don't know is that one of my favorite topics to talk about when I'm teaching yoga for pelvic health, that's my specialty as a yoga teacher, is overall bowel health. So yeah, I talk about poop, pooping and bowel health a lot. And that might seem weird if you've never thought about talking about bowel health with your yoga students. But isn't it weird that we aren't talking more about this all the time as humans? Because we are all, hopefully, pooping on a regular basis. If not, that can really impact our pelvic organs, our pelvic floor, and our overall health, maybe even more than you know. It's also very stressful when things are not working the way we would like with regards to bowel movements. And that does happen to everyone at some point in their life. So why isn't this a more common conversation? Why aren't more people talking about bowel movements and bowel health? And what does this have to do with yoga? As I said earlier, we recently had a guest expert join us inside of Pelvic Health Professionals. Huge shout out of thank you to Michelle Lyons. Oh my gosh, I'm such a fan of Michelle's information that she puts out into the world. Such a fan of her work as well. If you don't know Michelle, she's a physio. She's been a physio for over 25 years. And she's also a yoga, Pilates, and mindfulness teacher. And she has some training in nutrition and health coaching. Michelle specializes in pelvic health, and she really looks at how can we work with the whole person. She has a subspecialty in cancer rehab. She teaches nationally, internationally, and online. And it was such an honor to learn from her inside of Pelvic Health Professionals for an entire hour. And I wanted to share with you a couple of snippets from Michelle. So here's the first one where she's talking about how yoga and bowel health are connected.
I think there's a couple of different ways that yoga can play a role in good bowel health. I think one of the ways that yoga can really help is by bringing attention to the breath. And we know that breathing is absolutely essential for good pelvic floor muscle function. So by bringing that attention to the breath, by maybe setting aside that time for yourself to get on the mat and bringing your attention home to yourself and bringing the attention to the breath, to relaxing the abdominal wall, to allowing it to soften and let go, to bring the pelvic floor and the diaphragm into conversation with each other with a soft belly. Even that in itself, if that was the only aspect of yoga that we used, that would probably be enough to make huge changes when it comes to bowel function. But we've research showing that gentle twisting yoga. So, for example, a lot of the research has been done around Iyengar style yoga. So, using props as needed, but gentle twisting has been shown, in a very small dose to be effective for people with irritable bowel syndrome. And if we think about the geography of the digestive system in the center of our body, that would make sense because things move down and out from the mouth to the anus through a series of pressurized valves and tunnels. And by getting some movement into the center of the body, we're actually going to physically help peristalsis. But by using breath work and our asana practice, we're actually going to help calm down the stress hormone production. We're going to focus more on moving into that nice parasympathetic state. We call it rest and digest for a reason, because when we're in that nice parasympathetic dominant phase, that's when our digestive system is happiest and healthiest. And of course, we already, we know the benefits of movement, of non-threatening movement and breath work for enhancing the health of the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is really this information superhighway between the gut and the brain, really telling the brain what's happening. 80% of the messaging from the vagus nerve is going from the gut to the brain, and then 20% is coming back down. But again, lovely research out there showing that yoga and breathing and mindfulness and gentle movement in general, all of these have the ability to tone the vagus nerve. So we're looking at all these different facets of how yoga can come in, whether it's just the awareness of the breath and the pelvic floor and the importance of a soft belly, but bringing that sense of movement and peace back into the body may actually be more important. Stress is such a huge role to play in bowel health that if somebody has a practice where they can, again, just come to the mat, set aside the outside world for a while and just focus on bringing their attention home inside themselves, that in itself is possibly one of the most valuable aspects of what we can do to enhance the functioning of the digestive system, whether we're talking about constipation or continence issues or colorectal pain drivers.
See what I mean, connected yoga teachers? Oh my gosh, there is so much goodness here. Thank you again, Michelle, for really highlighting how effective yoga can be when we're talking about bowel health. And so I'd like to invite you, dear listener, the next time you're practicing yoga, or maybe right now you can roll out your yoga mat as you listen. But if not, if you're busy and on the go, do it the next time. Bring your awareness right now to how you think you're doing bowel health-wise today. So this isn't something that we're often asked to do, and maybe that feels uncomfortable for you for whatever reason. And the great thing about yoga is that we can touch on, okay, what can I become aware of? So maybe that's comfortable for you. If it is, I invite you to do that. As you do a pose here, I'm going to walk you through this pose. Wherever you are, when you can do this, come lying onto your back and hug your knees towards you. And what do you notice? You know, this is called wind relieving pose for a reason. And I'd like to invite you to find as many variations of the knees bent in this way as possible. So what other variations can you find where your knees are bent, kind of in this knees hugging in? You know, if we flip it over, that looks like a child's pose. If you want a more restorative version of this, one of my favorite ways to find a pose like this is if you move towards a wall for a moment and you lie on the floor almost like you're getting ready to do legs up the wall, but leave some space between you, your sits bones specifically, and the wall. And leave enough space so that you can put your feet on the wall, plant the soles of the feet on the wall, keep the knees bent, and find a reclined version of squat pose. So the knees are bent. You don't have to hug the knees in at all. I love this version of squat pose because it takes all the pressure off the knees. You don't have to worry about how you're going to balance and stay in the squat. The spine is long. You can find your breath and you can notice how this feels. So this is usually a pretty accessible way to find a squat pose. So whether you're hugging your knees in towards you or you've found a wall and you're in that squat at the wall, let's talk about toilets for a moment. Before the white porcelain thrones were invented that we know here in North America as toilets, and before we had even outdoor facilities that, you know, had kind of a off-the-ground toilet, before that we all were squatting. Some cultures still do, and the body loves this pose for pooping time. So how can we find a squat-like pose when we use a toilet? Now, some of you might be picturing like trying to get our feet up on the seat of the toilet. That's not what I mean. I know that some people do this or try this. That's not what I'm talking about. You know, you do you, but a simpler way to find this is to look at purchasing a squatty potty. Or, yeah, this isn't sponsored by Squatty Potty, but if anyone from the Squatty Potty company is listening, you should definitely consider sponsoring our podcast because I have a Squatty Potty and I love it. Okay, but if you don't have a Squatty Potty, you can try using 2 yoga blocks. So place your feet on the yoga blocks and notice how this feels the next time you use the washroom. That's what we call it here in Canada, by the way. It's a washroom here. It's a bathroom, I think, in other places. Okay, so try this out and see how it goes. See if it makes a difference the next time that you're using the toilet. Hey, connected yoga teachers, I'm popping in here for a moment in the middle of our conversation here about bowel health because I want to share a conversation from a fellow yoga teacher. Shout out to Sarah Villamil, who is from Calgary, Alberta, who uses OfferingTree. So OfferingTree is our sponsor. And I thought, how great would it be if you can hear from someone who uses this software instead of always hearing me talk about it? You can hear from someone who uses it. You're running a membership on there as well. Is that what I'm hearing?
I am, yeah.
And how are you finding that?
It's so seamless, Shannon. It is so amazing what you can do all under one umbrella with this website. I was just telling a friend the other day, you could have a website somewhere and have to have a subscription to a newsletter, a subscription to online sales, all of these different add-ons and integrations for your website. Whereas with OfferingTree, you just pay your one annual fee and then everything is included and it looks the same. It works well together. You don't have to worry about having to try to figure it out. You definitely don't have to be a computer programmer to use this program. You don't have to write in HTML. It's so user-friendly. Yeah, I just love having a membership on OfferingTree. It's a place that my clients can go. I have a member library where all the videos are accessible. And then I also have an on-demand library. So if you just go to my website and you're not a member, you'll only see the on-demand library. That's where anybody can rent from. And if you're a member, it's included in your membership. But if you become a member, my member library has a library of basically 3 months straight of all the videos of 3 classes a week.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing with us. Connected yoga teachers, if you're thinking about trying out OfferingTree, make sure to check out Sarah's website so you can see what it looks like. We'll put a link in the show notes. It's sarahvillamil.com. And if you do decide, hey, I want to try this out and I want to sign up, we have a discount code for you that's over at offeringtree.com/Shannon. We'll also put that in the show notes because I know that a lot of you listen while you're on the go. I get it. Now let's get back to our conversation about bowel health. So you know, as a yoga teacher, how important breath is. I don't have to explain that to you, but did you know the importance of breath with regards to pelvic health and bowel health and the impact that breath can have on our bowel health? Did you know that breath practices and movement can help in times of constipation? And also, did you know that constipation can lead to a lot of health issues, especially those related to the pelvic floor? So if you are teaching movement and breath in a yoga class, you are having a positive impact on people's bowel health without even maybe having that intention. That's a great thing. When I started to learn more and more about how the body works and how, our pelvic health and our bowel health, how that works, I started to realize how valuable yoga is for our overall health, but especially around pelvic health and bowel health. Another cool thing, and sometimes another difficult thing, is as our hormones change. So think of pregnancy, perimenopause, menopause, postmenopausal, aging, getting stressed. That's when our hormones change. This can impact our bowel health and function so much. So let's hear another snippet from Michelle, where Michelle talks about good bowel function and how it's impacted by our hormones.
Good bowel health, I think, is really when you don't have to think about it. If everything is just working without you having to worry or stress or be concerned, it doesn't hurt, it doesn't leak. I think generally bowel dysfunction we can break down into 3 categories. Either you can't keep stuff in, you can't get stuff out, or it hurts. And those would be kind of the three main areas of bowel or colorectal dysfunction. And we would have a lot of little subdivisions under those three main headings, but those would be the three categories. There are, some definitions of what's normal when it comes to good bowel health. The Rome 4 criteria. So every couple of years, a group of gastroenterologists internationally come together in Rome and decide, what are the latest definitions, what's normal, what's not normal. So what their current thinking is that in terms of having a bowel movement, anywhere from 3 times a day to 3 times a week is regarded as a normal bowel movement pattern. But of course, there's lots of nuance with that as well. We know, for example, for the female pelvic floor, damage to that either in an obstetric situation or as we age and our hormone levels change, our sphincteric control in the pelvic floor might not be as good as it used to be. It can be damaged physically, as we said, from childbirth. And so we can notice a little bit of leakage. There's some research to show that actually as many as 1 in 5 women over 40 have some degree of anal incontinence, and that could be gas or stool. Constipation is a very, very common issue, and it does tend to affect females more than males. IBS, for example, irritable bowel syndrome, affects literally twice as many females as males. What we generally tend to see is there's a strong connection between female physiology, both in terms of hormonal changes, and estrogen and progesterone would be the two main culprits here. But our stress hormones also play a huge role in bowel health too. So I'm a big fan of, again, just looking at the whole person. And that's why I really think yoga has a huge role to play in good bowel health. And it's not just me thinking that as well. The literature really would back up the role of yoga in terms of constipation, in terms of incontinence, in terms of stress management, in terms of irritable bowel syndrome, even looking further on down the line in terms of recovery from issues like colorectal cancer and the treatments that you go through to treat that. Yoga for me is kind of front and center in the treatment toolbox when it comes to helping people live well with any of these issues.
Isn't Michelle amazing? Connected yoga teachers. This is why I loved listening to this whole hour inside of Pelvic Health Professionals. And this is why I really thought I need to bring this onto the podcast and share it with all of you and just talk overall about how yoga can help with bowel health. Okay, one other note. You as a yoga teacher, you know a lot about the nervous system already and how we're either in this fight, flight state or in rest and digest. And it can't be both at the same time. And the rest and digest place that we really are, often moving students into in our yoga classes, that's where we need to be to literally digest our food and gain the most value from it. Yoga also, as you know, helps with stress management. So that relates to the nervous system. And this can impact your bowel health in such a tremendous way. So it will help with constipation, incontinence, irritable bowel syndrome, and other things. I love how Michelle covered so much of this in the call that we did with her inside of Pelvic Health Professionals, and that's why I want to make sure that you have access to it. We covered other things as well. We talked about what about the main bowel health issues that occur, especially for those who are peri or postmenopausal, and we talked about how yoga can help. We talked about how a decrease in estrogen, so think around menopause, but it might be other times in your life, might lead to leaking air or fecal matter. So both of those are bowel incontinence. Air is included as well in that. We also talked about how to strengthen the pelvic floor and the anal sphincter, and also how to relax it. Michelle also talked about how we can improve bowel continence and also how we can make sure that we have good stool formation. We talked about also why it's important to look before you flush. That was something I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to bring that to my next pelvic health workshop that I teach. And the coolest thing, a new thing that we learned in this call, is how to do the coccyx test and how it's different for prostate owners. The cues are different, and how this can really help us to figure out, is the pelvic floor holding a lot of tension? Or how can I engage the pelvic floor muscles and then make sure then that they're also relaxing? And so it was really cool. Michelle walked us all through this and then talked about, for prostate owners, the cues are different, and she walked us through that as well. And the last key takeaway that I had in this call was, when the bladder is leaking, it's often related to constipation. And so we know that it's very high. It's like 1 in 4 women, 1 in 9 men deal with bladder incontinence at some point in their life. And so I think it's so important, again, that we are addressing the issues of constipation and how that can be so related. So all of this and more is in that replay video. It is absolutely packed. And over in Pelvic Health Professionals, we take the notes for you. We have timestamps, we have links. There are very in-depth notes. And you also can join our upcoming live calls. So let me tell you about some of those. In July, Leslie Howard is talking to us about the energetics of the pelvis. August, Dr. Rose Schlaff is going to be talking to us about desire and libido. And then in September, Jill Mueller is coming in to talk to us about endometriosis. Jill is a pelvic health PT who has endo. And so I'm really excited that we get to learn from her as well. Oh, and big kind of top secret thing that I've only told a very few amount of people. So you're one of the first ones to know now. I am going to be teaching a 6-week series, Yoga for Pelvic Health. It'll be online. Yes, there will be a replay if you can't be there live, but I really want to teach it live. Some people have asked me lately, do you miss teaching yoga? And I was thinking, you know what? I do. And the great thing is that everyone inside of Pelvic Health Professionals has access to that. It's going to be included in our membership. And that alone is $120 for everyone else for the 6 classes. But for members, it's included. So yeah, I would say if you are thinking about joining Pelvic Health Professionals, now is a great time. And I also want to remind you that I'm giving you a free month of access to this. So you can head on over to pelvichealthprofessionals.com, join there, use the coupon code ListenersGift279 at checkout, and that's going to give you access to everything for a full month. And then you can decide then, do you want to hang out and learn more? Do you want to have access to everything there in the library and the new and upcoming calls? Do you want to submit questions and just continue to learn? It renews just like Netflix. And just like Netflix, you can cancel at any time. Let's say you get busy or, you're like, okay, I've learned enough. It's time for me to go. That is fine. Do not feel bad about that at all. It's there for you when you're ready to dive in and learn, and then you can cancel at any time. So I'm curious now, what are your thoughts in talking about bowel health, pooping, whatever you want to call it, in your yoga classes or in your day-to-day conversations? I also love how inside of Pelvic Health Professionals, we had a great call all about pediatric pelvic health. And there was this just amazing list of books for children to really normalize talking about pooping and to figure out when there's an issue. And I also I want to highlight how Michelle really talked about how there are 3 areas of issue here. When we have leaking, when we have constipation or when we have pain with a bowel movement. And if you have any of those things, please, please, please reach out to a pelvic health PT. They specialize in this. Learn and find a healthcare team that really understands bowel health and understands overall pelvic health as well. It's such a gift when you can find people like that. And you're not alone. So there are many people who are not talking about their bowel health, even with their doctor, even with their healthcare team. You're not alone in this. It's not talked about enough. And let's please normalize it because we're all doing it. And I hope that it becomes a regular conversation in yoga classes. So if you're inspired to share this in any way, what you've learned here today, even if you're inspired to just add one small thing, and that's maybe, as you move into squat pose, you can tell students this really can help you as you're digesting your food. That's a way to say it without having to say poop or pooping. I'm curious to hear how you weave this into your classes or how your awareness just of your bowel health is as you're practicing in your own yoga practice this week. All right, I also want to give a shout out to Heidi Glass, who sent in this audio quite a long time ago. Thank you so much, Heidi. It just warms my heart to hear about connected yoga teacher listeners connecting. So listen to this story.
Hi, Shannon. This is Heidi Glass calling from Palmetto, Florida, and I'm calling today to share with you a very serendipitous moment I had recently. I started listening to your podcast a few years ago, and one time I called in and left you a voicemail thanking you for a podcast on teens because I provide yoga classes for teens, and it was pretty neat for me to hear that and hear someone else that was doing the same thing. Well, lo and behold, a woman named Nicole, who owns a little twisted yoga studio in Palmetto, Florida, recently was listening to some old episodes and heard my voicemail that you had put on the show, 146. And she contacted me, and now we are collaborating together for me to provide a teen class for her yoga studio. So isn't that a serendipitous moment? Someone who has a podcast in Canada has brought together two people that live in the same town. So I just wanted to share that with you and just thank you so much. I enjoy your episodes. I continue to enjoy your episodes. And it really is a really good name, The Connected Yoga Teacher, because you've connected two people just recently. And I also wanted to share my very first car was a turquoise 4-door dinosaur. It was a really big, really ugly station wagon, but it was wheels. And I was happy to have it when my dad gave it to me when I turned 16. So thanks again.
Oh my goodness, Heidi, I love this so much. Thank you for sharing. I am thrilled that, as you said, me as a podcaster from Canada has connected two yoga teachers in your town. This is why I do the work that I do. And connected yoga teachers, if you have not left us a review yet or a voice message, you can do that. If you want to leave a review, it's probably easiest to do that through iTunes or Apple. I know there's a few steps on there, but you can do that right from our show notes. So over at theconnectedyogateacher.com/279 is where the show notes are for this episode. And there's a button there, leave a review. And if you want to leave us a voice message, head on over to our website, theconnectedyogateacher.com. There's a button there that will allow you to leave a voice message. And you know what I would love to hear about if you have the time to do this? If you use OfferingTree, leave me a voice message and send me an audio clip. Tell me what you love about this. You can also tell me what you wish it offered. There's always that as we start using technology. There's always like, I love this part of it, and I really hope they add this thing to it. I always have that when I use technology. And also in that, tell me where you teach, tell me what kind of yoga you teach in that voice message, and send me your website or your social media link. And if we use that audio, we'll put that in our show notes and we'll promote the yoga that you do. And even if you don't use OfferingTree, you can still leave me a voice message. Tell me what you think about one of the podcast episodes. Tell me how things are going as a yoga teacher this week. All audio is welcome. Just a total side note on that audio. If you go to leave audio, we use SpeakPipe and it allows 90 seconds because I use the free version of it. I'm very frugal when I can be. And so if you run out of time, just record another one. It will allow you to send all kinds of voice messages there. And if that's annoying, record your own audio from your phone and then send it to me in an email. Because you've listened all the way to the end here, I want to tell you what's coming up next week on the podcast. And then for quite a few episodes, we're really going to focus in on growing your yoga business and your teaching skills. So next week, we're going to talk about making a profit as a yoga teacher. We're going to get right into a money conversation. I'm very excited about sharing this with you. Listening to our guest who we have, shout out to Shannon Simmons, made me really kind of take stock in my own business and look at my own money stuff. So it's one of those motivating ones. And so if you're feeling like I need to make more money as a yoga teacher, we have got you next week. Huge thank you to our team over here, Suzanne, Crunch, and Sinead. Oh my gosh, these are 3 amazing humans who do amazing work out in this world and also who put the podcast together in various ways so that it comes to you, dear listener. That's the next person I want to thank is you. I am so grateful that you're here, that you have hung out, that you're like, okay, Shannon this week is talking about bowel health and I'm here for it. As weird as it might have been, as uncomfortable maybe, or as curious as you were, I hope it was helpful. And I'm just grateful that you spent your time here. I'm also curious, what are you going to be doing this week to stay connected to yourself, your yoga practice, and to your community so that you can share the yoga that lights you up?